So, thank you everyone for tuning in to yet another episode in which I talk about issues related to public transport. Today's topic is going to be um, I don't want to call it crayon because crayon usually means drawing new lines on a map, but rather the equivalent of that for railway junctions in the New York region. Um, Railway junctions are an important and underrated feature of complex mainline systems, also not mainline systems. In New York City Transit is such a complex interline system that the junctions um, are very important there as well. For example, if you have looked at how things work in Upper Manhattan, so you have the one train from Inwood or even beyond to the local tracks, and you have the 2 and 3 trains that go through Central Harlem to the express tracks. The reason they're like this, rather than some Central Harlem trains going local and some West Harlem, Washington Heights trains going express, which is how things were in the early 20th century. This is because the setup of the railway junction where these lines meet makes it very difficult to run things that way and very easy to run things the current way. So all one trains are local to Van Cortlandt Park. All 2 and 3 trains are express to and beyond Central Harlem. Now, mainline railways are far more complex than the New York City subway, and so their junctions um, constrain operations in a much more fundamental way. However, there is one big advantage for discussing railway junctions on mainline systems relative to the New York City subway, which is on the New York City subway, all of these junctions are underground, so changing them is, in many cases, no simpler or no less expensive than building an entirely new line. Whereas on mainline trains, the junctions are practically never underground. They're always, or practically always, uh, above ground. And this means that fixing them still costs money, but it costs human amounts of money, not lol amounts of money, if that makes sense. Um, yeah, thank you, Pro. The yeah, so this is 100% right. The and we're gonna go into this, or specifically what makes the LIRR poorly designed on this. Yeah, hi, Shoal, and yes, so if you guys who are only watching this on YouTube are wondering what this is in reference to, before I started recording, I said that two of the Railfan Zoomers scare me. Shaul is one of them. The other is Uday Schultz, aka A320 LGA on Twitter. And no, they literally scare me. They're incredibly well informed, incredibly insightful um, about uh, about the system and about um, where it should go. So yeah, this is. I mean, so we're gonna open with the question of Jamaica and what's going on there. Now, Shaul, let me know if I'm screwing up by using Open Railway Map for this, because it's possible that Open Railway Map is out of date. This is a website that is made. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, exactly. So, um, Shaul, you're literally the first person to call me kind. No, I'm not going to. Okay. Oh God. That link is not publicly accessible. Sure, we can. That can be. Okay. So this, and I'm gonna request access. Okay. The, does this work? Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So before I read all of this, I do want to look at the actual map for a moment. Oh, hi, Sonny. Um, okay, when you say you're Jamaican native, I've got to ask, do you mean Jamaica Queens or Jamaica the country? Because I slightly trolled Shaul about this a couple days ago, and he requested the topic of this video, that is to say, talking about where the Jamaica station junction, how it should look, and I instead sent a little crayon map of a subway that I think Kingston, Jamaica should be building. Anyway, so the context for Jamaica is as follows. Uh, there are over here. So Jamaica is the main transfer point of the LIRR. It is not the main station. The main station is far and away Penn Station, right? I mean, the jobs are predominantly in Midtown Manhattan. Now, Jamaica is a secondary business district. There are jobs in Jamaica, um, but at this point, it's not even the main job center for Queens. I think it used to be at one point, but since then, the main job center of Queens has shifted toward uh, Long Island City, where you might think, oh, cool, the train is not there yet, but there are no stops on the main line in Long Island City. The stops go Penn Station and then Woodside. Um, there are plans to build a station right here called Sunnyside, right at this Queens Boulevard Bridge, which is pretty close to many of these jobs. These jobs tend to be around here. I keep saying that they should build a station here at Sunnyside Junction. And this is because of East Side Access. We're going to get into East Side Access very, very soon. So there is the LIRR mainline. It's here. It has 4 tracks. Let me also move my face to the left because that's where the bar here is. And you don't need to know the and the legend, things like bridge or tunnel. That's not terribly important here. I can just point out what these are. So this is a 4-track mainline. Then it might be harder to see, but you also have this 2-track mainline. It's called it's called the Atlantic Branch, which starts in downtown Brooklyn. There's no onward connection to Manhattan. There were plans to build one. I'm forgetting whether you go back to the late 90s or post 9/11. The idea was to connect the LIRR to Lower Manhattan, and there definitely were plans for this. Right after 9/11 is kind of revitalization. They did not happen. I think it's one of the victims of high New York City construction costs. Again, the plans may have predated 9/11, but I do not remember. So this is kind of a reverse branch. That is to say, there's a main line here, and then it branches toward the city. This is 2 tracks, and then there is this line. The one that's colored yellow because it's a sideline. It's on a main line. There's very little traffic here. There's a handful of freight trains. I forget how many. And a small handful of passenger trains. This is also unelectrified. So these trains only go to Long Island City Terminal, which is not depicted. You see the station names are in blue. It is not depicted, so let's zoom in a little bit. So Long Island City and Hunters Point Avenue, they might look like they're on the main line, but they're not. So there are 2 ways that a train from Jamaica can end up on the surface in Long Island City. This is a surface station. The tunnel toward Penn Station diverges from what used to be the main line and is now a lightly used reverse branch. The divergence is around here, around like in Sunnyside Yard. So you can still stop here and serve Penn Station, but no closer to the river. Then you're already in the tunnel. So you have coming from the main line. Again, what used to be the main line is now a reverse branch of the main line. You have Hunters Point Avenue, where you have a connection to the 7, and Long Island City, the old terminal. This is the lower Montauk line, the one in yellow, the one that is unelectrified and has very light traffic. It might not have traffic at all. it's very. Um, I want to say that the timetable that I remember is one train a day in each direction, but the timetables change from time to time. But at any rate, very light traffic, um, going only to Long Island City Terminal, not even Hunters Point. Now, um, as Prog WML6, I do not know if I know you by another name. If I do, please let me know. And Shoal are pointing out. Oh, so yeah, there were plans to extend the Atlantic branch to Lower Manhattan already in the 90s. Great. Yeah, and as you guys are mentioning, this was a giant lost opportunity. There is a reason that when a crayon regional rail tunnels, so the really flashy part that looks like nice lines on a map and not the um, junctions that we're about to be discussing, one of the things that they start with is connecting Atlantic Terminal to Lower Manhattan to a station that's going to be very expensive to build as a deep mine cavern. You see all this morass in light blue. Light means it's subway. Blue means it's the subway, if that makes sense. So this color, for example, the blue means subway. The dark and the things beyond means it's a bridge. So here the subway is elevated. This is a morass of underground lines. A station here could easily cost $1 billion, and I don't mean $1 billion in New York. I mean $1 billion. Um, and then usually when I keep crayoning, I suggest that this keep going to Jersey. So go to Fulton Street, and then I used to say to Hoboken, but Hoboken is not the best place. The uh, jobs are mostly Newport and what they call here Harborside Financial Center. This is Exchange Place in Jersey City. All of this is recent urban renewal. These used to be rail yards for mainline railways in the steam era that could not make it to Manhattan across the river. So they all stopped at these terminals, things like Hoboken, um, Newport, which used to be called Pavonia, Exchange Place. This used to be called Communipaw. And then people would take a ferry. Now, these railroads have all closed because Penn Station opened for the Pennsylvania Railroad, and then the other railroads mostly just went bankrupt. Um, and so Hoboken was preserved as a commuter terminal because of PATH. This is also in light blue. This is a subway system for Jersey City, essentially, for people who are unfamiliar. Uh, and then the rest was redeveloped and is now and just as Long Island City here has kind of displaced Jamaica as the main business center of Queens, so has Exchange Place um, displaced Journal Square, which is here as the main job center of Jersey City. So when I keep crayoning, I say things like they should not just build Atlantic to the LIRR's plan, but also make it kind of a through run to Jersey through, let's say, Newport maybe, and then to these lines, the ones that go north here. These are called the Erie Lines, after the railroad that they used to be part of. And then maybe north-south, this is the Metro North trunk. Go south, intersect this Lower Manhattan station, and then something that is pretty crazy and whimsical, but I will defend it. Go lengthwise under the harbor to Staten Island. This is colored like it's the subway because it currently runs subway trains, but this used to be a mainline railway. Yeah, exactly. I mean, a bunch of those railroads would have gone bankrupt anyway, you are right. However, New York Penn Station also meant that there was just less traffic to, for example, Exchange Place, because the Pennsylvania Railroad just ran the main passenger trains to New York Penn Station and electrified the main line. Um, um, okay. Thanks, really. I was gonna ask whether there's and thanks on this too. Yeah, there's a um, yeah. As I said, I remember there was one nonstop train. I just did not remember the reroute. So thanks. So yeah, so the Lower Montauk currently has no. Should we just learn to stop clicking these and start copy and start doing copy paste? So there's this and this. Okay. So anyway, the context is 4 tracks, 2 tracks, 2 tracks. To the east, it's actually symmetric. So this is the Atlantic branch. It's even labeled the Atlantic branch. And this is the Montauk line, Montauk branch, I guess. So it's 2 tracks and 2 tracks. They kind of meet again here. I believe historically they, like, I want to say that historically one of these was a cutoff for the other. There was a South Side Railway, but and then this is the main line. Again, main line here, Atlantic here, and then it goes to either Far Rockaway, which is colored as a branch, or Long Beach, and then Montauk, which is technically this, but again, no passenger trains, and then here, and then either West Hampstead or much more likely onward to Babylon, or occasionally the actual place of Montauk, which is like a tip of Long Island here. This is Montauk. This is not even commuter rail. This is intercity rail that runs a handful of times a day, mostly not even at rush hour because it's mostly for excursion railways all the way here. Again, the line divisionism describing it as modern. Historically, it went different. Like historically, the LIR started here and went like this. So what is called the main line opened later. I don't remember the history. Then there was, I think this was something called the South Side. But at any rate, this is how they run now. But, well, main line goes to Manhattan. Lower Montauk line goes to basically nothing. Long Island City, as I said, there are lots of jobs here, but first of all, the Lower Montauk line only serves this station. The jobs, yeah, there are some jobs here, but there are more jobs here. Second, this doesn't connect with the subway well. So this just never developed a lot of ridership. Now, this line, the Atlantic branch to the sensitivity of the mouse scroll here is too high, unfortunately. The Atlantic branch has more ridership. It doesn't have the ridership of the main line. Downtown Brooklyn, at this point, so downtown Brooklyn historically was the second largest job center. Maybe third largest if you count Midtown and Lower Manhattan separately. At this point, it and Long Island City are about even. It's difficult to tell which has more, and the reason is that teaching jobs are often just assigned to Brooklyn Borough Hall in the census. So it's difficult to do an exact count of the number of jobs because there's a lot of public sector jobs in the city are misassigned to either City Hall here or Borough Hall here. But there are also lots of jobs at these 2 buildings, so you can't just exclude the building, just exclude these blocks. So within some kind of error term, this and this are the largest job centers in the city outside Manhattan. In fact, largest job centers in the region outside Manhattan. They're bigger than any single job center in Jersey. And 1861. Okay. Yeah. Okay. This makes sense. Yes. As I said, I didn't remember the exact history of this. The Montauk was the cutoff. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I remember. Yeah, especially because I don't think it would be depicted on Open Railway Map, but on Google Earth, you might be able to. You might even be able to see it a little bit in the street network that you can see kind of how the streets here look like they're interrupted by a diagonal. So this line used to go like this, and you can kind of see the continuation. And this went all the way up until here, and is no longer in service. At any rate, 422, 422, where the 4 go 2 and 2. They're triple tracking this portion. The reason is that there's a lot of traffic here. There is a lot of traffic here, and it's traffic that can fill one track in each direction, but not with very creative local and express service patterns. It's something like 20 trains per hour west of Hicksville or west of Mineola. There's very, very little traffic on this line. It's called Oyster Bay. So the traffic is mostly Mainline or Port Jefferson, and because they love their express trains and they will not give them up in a crunch, they run trains one way at rush hour on this two-track portion. So they're building a third track in order, which they say will permit reverse peak service. Bullshit. They can run reverse peak service today, but again, it means letting go of the system where some trains stop at Westbury or New Hyde Park, and most trains don't, and they overtake each other, and the scheduling is so fragile that they need something like 30% schedule pad. If you look at the performance of the rolling stock of the LRR, even though it's derated, they derated the initial acceleration of these trains for stupid reasons. But even if you take the derating into account, and you look at the maximum speed, and this is a very straight line, and the maximum speed here is pretty decent, and you look how much it would, how long it would take to run this timetable from Hicksville to Penn Station, or from Ronkonkoma, not Brentwood. Again, this is the mouse scroll being a little too sensitive. From Ronkonkoma here to Penn Station, it's something like a 30% schedule pad. The timetable time is about 30% longer than the technical travel time, and this is a huge amount of padding. In Switzerland, the padding is 7%. So out of every 15 minutes, 1 minute is a pad. The way it works is that the 15th minute on each route is the pad minute. And so here it's not 7%. It's not the 15% of some American commuter railways. It's 30, and this is because of very poor timetabling. We're going to get into the importance of timetabling and infrastructure construction in tandem. So yeah, and this is another problem. So this is a railway junction issue. As I said, it's important, and this is an example for why. It's very common on busy lines in the United States to have more than one track. The busy lines are not just single track; they're double track, sometimes even more. But then, whenever they have junctions, the junctions are just they kind of pretend it's not double track. So the whole point of why do you double track lines? Okay, why is a section like here, like this one? Why is it two tracks? Well, it's two tracks. I don't mean capacity. Capacity is an abstract term. Okay, so this is three tracks because, as I said, they're triple tracking this. But this is but you see, so this bit, the one in the south, is literally the this is under construction. The dash line means it's under construction. So to existing tracks, why? It means that trains can go in each direction without conflicting. This is what it means, and this massively raises capacity because it means you can just run inbound and outbound trains and not have to worry about mucking the same line. But this is fundamentally what it means. And unfortunately, railway junctions tend not to do that. So here, for example, is how this works. This is a flat junction. So the X here denotes the frog. This is just a flat junction. So it means that even though over here this is two tracks, I think the outer line might be single track, but this part is double track. The main line is, for now, double track. And so trains in America run on the right. So inbound trains go like this, and it's fine. But outbound trains to Oyster Bay will go on what is depicted as the middle line, i.e. the lower of the two complete lines, ignoring the dash line, and then it goes to the lower of the yellow lines, and then, so this is outbounds to Oyster Bay, and then inbounds on the main line conflict here at grade. And this imposes annoying dependency in a timetable. Now, if you run, I don't know, a train every 10 minutes, that's not a big deal. You can always schedule around them. If you run a train every 5 minutes, then some flat junctions are okay. You need to schedule around them and it's difficult, but it's okay. But the main line, as discussed above, does not run a train every 5 minutes at rush hour. The timetable used to be something like 20 trains an hour. Maybe even a bit more, like 21, 22. When it's a train every 3 minutes and you have a flat junction, your schedule is just going to be a mess. Which means that probably the Oyster Bay, if they don't want to grade separate this, needs to just have a pocket track around here so that it just make people transfer. It will annoy the people of Oyster Bay off. Sorry, it will annoy them off. It will annoy them or piss them off. That's fine. There's not a lot of ridership here. I want to say it's maybe 1 peak train or 2 peak trains an hour. And this just is going to muck things for everyone else. Slow things down for other people considerably. Yeah, and it's the same thing. And yeah, it's the same thing here. Like they're adding tracks, but they're not thinking in terms of how the schedule is going to be such that trains are going to not conflict. And this is where you talk about the magic triangle. When I say, so, what is the magic triangle? It is not called it's not called magic by any of the practitioners. Magic. I almost want to say it's a Richard Lunaricism. It's but the triangle is real. The triangle is the original. In Switzerland, the way they plan railways is with a triangle where they plan infrastructure, rolling stock, and the timetable in tandem. What does this mean? Rolling stock. So in the original case in Switzerland, the rolling stock bit meant that they would buy double-deck intercity trains as an alternative to lengthening platforms at all of the stations. Elsewhere, this should mean something very different. It should mean electrification. Switzerland lucked out by electrifying the entire railway network during World War II because there was a coal shortage. They couldn't even get new electric locomotives because of shortages of everything during the war. So they electrified the railways. They had enough hydropower. They weren't reliant on electricity imports from Nazi Germany. And then they just took their steam locomotives and they converted them to run on electricity. That is, these were steam locomotives. That is to say, external combustion engines, where the heat for the external combustion was not delivered via coal, but via via electricity. And then after the war, they got normal electric locomotives. So everywhere else, this means that you need to electrify, because when you electrify and you get electric multiple units, not locomotives, you can have a very reliable system. You can be sure that there are not going to be breakdowns. So on the LIRR, this would mean electrifying this branch, which is diesel, electrifying this line, which is electrified up to Huntington. The rest is diesel. So you want to electrify all of this for many reasons, but one of them is to prevent low reliability diesel locomotives from mucking your very high traffic electrified track. You want to make sure that this is not going to happen because you want to be able to pad your timetable 7% and not 30%, and a bunch of so I'm describing one of the things, what the things are that you need to do to avoid having such a padded schedule. And one of them is to avoid being dependent on diesel locomotive reliability, which is very poor, by more than a full order of magnitude on the LIRR than on the EMUs. Now, this is rolling stock. Timetable means you write a fixed clock face timetable for everything. Which is going to look a little different on the LIR because the tucked interval on these is going to be something like 10 minutes, pretty far out. I mean, I'm pretty sure you can do 10-minute tucked all the way to Hicksville all day, and then what, 20 minutes to Huntington and Ronkonkoma. Honestly, you might even be able to fill more trains than that. And then and then at rush hour you run in the midpoints, and uh, this is the timetable, and then the infrastructure is, well, extra tracks, but also other things like fixing the railway junction. So in Mineola, now actual New York area rail fans, I ask you to forgive me because I don't remember the names of most of these junctions. Oh, why not electrify Oyster Bay as well? Yeah, you can do that. Um, but the land use. So the Open Railway Map does not make it clear what the land use here is. Um, so let's go on Google. So let me go on Google Earth and show you what the land use is. Again, with the sensitivity of the mouse scroll. So let's go on Google Earth and gaze for a moment. Here the mouse scroll is something that I'm much more used to. This is the Oyster Bay area. So this is the Hempstead branch, Mineola, and then look at where the line goes. So the line goes through this, and you can even see at this scale, little gray, lots of green, very low population density, very low density zoning, random golf courses right next to the railway, even the stations which might be slightly more developed. This is the level of development that we're talking about. At one of these stations, so about the densest that you can hope for is single family houses that are on a street that is at least in theory walkable right next to the station. So the population density here is just not high. And you can see how grayer it is, how much grayer it is everywhere else. Now, unfortunately, it's not very transit-oriented gray. So these are maybe old. So places like Glen Cove or Oyster Bay. These are very old pre-war towns that look very, very exclusive. And a lot of the gray here is not old. Is not old like that. It's stuff like Levittown, so post-war suburbia designed around cars. And yeah, maybe you drive to a park and ride, and then you take the train. But that's still not transit-oriented development. So here we see more gray, but it's not gray that's very focused on where the train stations are, unfortunately. So Hicksville does have more development. Bear in mind that Hicksville is also the second busiest suburban train station on Long Island. The busiest is Ronkonkoma, which is just a park and ride. So note that Hicksville, you see how parking oriented this is. So here it's giant parking lots. A lot of these buildings are parking garages for park and riders from far away. But just behind that, we see more density. Now, this is not very dense. This is still all single family. But it's a lot of single family, not a little bit of single family and then golf courses. So here people don't take the bus, they don't bike, they drive to here. And this is one of the things that is not part of the Swiss magic triangles, but not triangle, but should be maybe a fourth leg, which is development. So, and this should also include stuff like not just connecting buses with, I won't say timed connections, but the trains here should run at the minimum every 10 minutes all day. I can even say a case for every 5 minutes. So you don't time every 10 minutes, you time every 20, every 15, every 20, every 30 on some branches. So this means run some buses, make these streets bikeable so people can just bike to Hicksville, and then bike parking consumes very little space. Don't make people bring bikes on trains, please. This is be Dutch and not German. In the Netherlands, stations have bike parking. In Germany, instead, people bring the bikes on the train. These are very busy trains. You want people not to bring bikes on them. So just build bike parking. So this is on the level of development, maybe. But even today, with all the parking rides, people people drive from all over. You see lots of gray. Here, not a lot of gray, so the ridership here is just not going to be significant. Would Port Jefferson need double tracking? Yes, but I do not know how much. So the Port Jefferson line, the unelectrified portions of it are single track, substantially. They need to be partly doubled, but I do not know how much. This might be part of what we're going to do with the Transit Coasts project. If it relates to Northeast Corridor issues, it might. I'm not sure. As I mentioned, the mainline rail is a very complex system where even things on a branch of the main line of the LIRR, which has no intercity traffic, this might turn out to be relevant to intercity rail timetabling. I do not know. And often the impetus for doing full double tracking is that it's too complicated to exactly figure out the minimum double tracking that you need, and things might change elsewhere so much that the places where you need double track might change. So while we're on the subject of railway junctions, again, I don't remember the names of these junctions. I apologize. This is also a flat junction. And they should potentially grade separated, although I can also see them not doing so and declaring this is the junction we're keeping flat, and then everything else is going to be designed around this. This is something that I can see happen. The court, you're asking about whether future electrification should do third rail or catenary? I don't know. I expect that extensions should just be third rail and they should use dual voltage trains. So here's a trick. Motors are more complex on the train when they're AC than when they're DC, and you need a bigger transform because of the transformer. DC trains are lighter than AC trains, and AC trains at high frequency are lighter than at low frequency. So for example, the Pendolino, the Italian Pendolino, was originally designed for Italian railways, which are overhead wires, but they're DC. They're 3,000 volt direct current. So they made versions of the Pendolino that are multi-voltage for international service, and they're heavier than the base because they need transformers, and the one that is tri-voltage, so they can also run into Switzerland and Germany, where we use 15 kilovolt, 16 and 2/3 hertz power. They're not only heavier than the base DC only trains, but they're also heavier than the dual voltage DC and 25 kilovolt 50 hertz trains running through France. Because again, the transformer on the train, its mass is inversely proportional to frequency. So the upshot is that once you've built your train for high voltage catenary, modding it for low voltage catenary is easy. Modding it for low voltage third rail requires adding the third rail shoe, but that by itself is not very complicated. I mean, you need to buy trains for that, but it's not going to constrain your system in any way, so I'm tempted to say just leave it third rail. Yeah, yes, Switzerland did have proper electric locos, but they also had steam locomotives that were that were converted to generate heat via electricity during the war. Let me just. I'm just searching through chat to make sure that I'm not saying things that have already been said. Yeah, Hicksville. Yeah, Hicksville is a parking crater. I mean, it's. I mean, I don't want to. I mean, you're going to call me a boomer for this, but I'm pretty sure that I was complaining about this when you were either 9 or 10 years old. I think it's one of the very old posts on my blog from 2011. And yeah, it's all of this is parking craters. Um, oh, it's called Divide. Yeah, I guess it was also called. I guess there. I guess if I zoom in and out, they give me the name of the interlocking divide or something. Yeah, this. So anyway, all of this is preliminary because all I'm saying is describing to the LIRR as it is. Now, the biggest rail mega project expansion in New York is about to wrap up. Um, it is not Second Avenue Subway. Second Avenue Subway was a horse to be traded for it. This was what city Democrats wanted, led by the Assembly Speaker who represented this area of the Lower East Side, which would be served by the, at this point, vaporware fourth phase of Second Avenue Subway, Sheldon Silver, who has since been convicted of corruption. This was his deal with the Republican Governor George Pataki, with his base among suburbanites, especially Long Island. They wanted LIRR investment, so they agreed to build first phase of Second Avenue Subway, and in exchange for what was at the time maybe a little more expensive and has since mushroomed to be, I think, a $12 billion monstrosity called East Side Access. Now, East Side Access is partly visible here because most of the construction has already been done. The point of East Side Access is, instead of just feeding from the main line to Penn Station, you can go underneath, and you can see a little bit of that here. They're even saying East Side Access here. There was a surprisingly expensive tunnel just to go underneath the rail yard. Underneath the F train here, the tunnel across the East River for the F train, 63rd Street Tunnel, in fact, was built as a double-deck 4-track tunnel starting in the 60s because they were already then planning on East Side Access. So 2 tracks designed for the subway, 2 tracks for the LIRR. Then the tunnel pre-exists, so they connected to the tunnel here. Then from the tunnel here, they're connecting to Grand Central. But wait, they're not connecting to Grand Central, the giant terminal, but rather they're connecting to a newly built cavern underneath Grand Central because the LIRR and Metro North do not like sharing. Now, if it sounds like this is a stupid project, in my construction cost database, this one, it is, by a margin, the most expensive urban rail tunnel per kilometer ever built. Number 2 is the not yet actually built Gateway and Second Avenue Subway Phase 2. And it's about twice as expensive as either of them per kilometer. Second Avenue Subway Phase 1, which is the most expensive completed tunnel, and the 7 extension, which is the, I believe, second most expensive completed tunnel, are somewhat less expensive than this. So this is about, at this point, 3 times as expensive per kilometer as Second Avenue Subway. Does it make sense to eventually build 4 tracks all the way to Hicksville? I keep going back and forth on this, but at this point I'm no. I think it's much more important to make sure there's capacity for local travel. Essentially, it's very easy to run good service, which, I mean, high frequency all day in the city. This means a train every 5 minutes, not even every 10, to all of these stops. So Woodside, maybe open these infill stations that they're talking about, like Sunnyside here, the one that I'm talking about, like Sunnyside Junction here. Maybe even build something here for the connection to, so this is a not quite disused but not very busy freight line, which is where the Innerborough Express is designed to go. So maybe build a junction station here or something. But not too many. You want this to be express next to the subway. Forest Hills, Kew Gardens, which for some reason is not depicted as a station at this Zoom, but this is an LIRR station. They have very low frequency because the fares are held high. The fares within the city on the LIRR are not integrated with subway fares, and as a result, ridership within the city is suppressed. So if they maybe build an infill or two, but more importantly, run the trains frequently and at the same fare within the city as on the subway, then the local tracks are going to just fill with city residents who don't want to maybe take a very slow bus to the train and can just go from Hollis direct to city center, from Queens Village direct to city center, from uh, Laurelton, from St. Albans direct to city center. Um, so what I keep saying that they should be doing is local tracks. Remember, this is a 4-track line. Local tracks go here, then they all divert to Hampstead, or you see this black line. This is a disused line. In fact, there's this used to be called the Central Branch, and these have been removed where the right-of-way exists through Levittown. And some rail fans, in my belief, incorrectly want this restored. I don't think restoring this is particularly interesting. But going up until here is because there's actually a fair number of jobs right around here. This is one of the very few actual job centers on Long Island. Long Island is one of the most bedroom community of American suburbs. In the United States, there's an extreme amount, by European standard, of job sprawl, that is to say, jobs moving from the city to suburban office parks. Now, in New York, there has been less job sprawl than in most of America, and this is also true of Boston and San Francisco, which is ironic because all of these three cities have giant suburban job centers that are bylines for job sprawl. In New York, this is White Plains, Stamford, or the I-287 corridor in Jersey. In Boston, this is Route 128, and in San Francisco, this is Silicon Valley. And yet, all three cities have maintained a healthy share of their regional jobs within city center. Note also that when I mentioned to you very well-known suburban job centers around New York, these were not Long Island. White Plains is in Westchester. Stamford is in kind of the Gold Coast, and Jersey is Jersey. Jersey has way more job sprawl. Much of which is not even proper job sprawl. A lot of it is pre-war. For example, the suburb, legally a city, I think, called Edison, in central Jersey. It's called this way because this is where Thomas Edison built a lot of his early factories for General Electric. And I think the first electric lighting in the world was actually there, and only then did they start doing it in New York, or let's say in Paris. And so, but it's still a giant cluster of suburban auto-oriented jobs, including, for example, a lot of pharmaceutical jobs. So quite a lot of people who work in vaccine development work right there. And so Long Island doesn't really have that, for which, as I understand it, the reason is Robert Moses. My understanding is that Robert Moses had an idea of urban renewal and suburbanization in which proper Americans, that is to say, white people, live in the suburbs or in urban neighborhoods and then work within city center. My understanding is that one of the reasons that is that he refused to agree to urban renewal for the Brooklyn Dodgers, and this is why the Dodgers moved to Los Angeles. And likewise, Long Island, which was very heavily developed around Robert Moses built parkways, lacks giant suburban job centers. The exceptions are Mineola and this is called Nassau Community College here, but there's a lot more stuff here. It's called East Garden City. Now, bear in mind, these are much smaller job centers than White Plains, but these are job centers. So it's useful to so passenger trains run like this. They should also run like this, and then very heavy local passenger traffic. So this brings us to the first junction. This is called Queens Interlocking. And right now it's two tracks. They're building a third track. But they're not really thinking. So they're thinking, oh, 4 tracks here. Most trains go on the main line, so let's keep it 3 tracks. They're not thinking how these trains are going to interact. So the way this works is that at Floral Park, the lines run side by side, and then at the actual interlocking, they weave into a 4-track main line, and then trains have to cross opposing traffic at grade. Unfortunately, this is not changing. So this is... okay. Oh, that's what I didn't realize. I knew that I know about the history of the math, but for some reason I thought that Moses didn't want this. I didn't realize that Moses even offered Shea Stadium. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, there already is a 2-track line toward Ronkonkoma. The main line has been double track. And yes, thank you, Shaul. Yes, all express trains should stop at Floral Park. The way the system works right now, they don't really care about transfers. So local trains, for example, from Hampstead, stop at these stops, and then Floral Park, and then they keep going, and then they keep making the city stops, which don't have a lot of ridership because the fares are high. They have some ridership. The ridership really only drops to 0 where the subway is adjacent, because here you have an option between an expensive train and it's not very frequent, and a very slow bus to subway slog. Here you have an option between a train that's very expensive and a subway train that's cheaper and slower, but not much slower. So yeah. So the way it works right now is that the trains from the main line, it's very. I don't think they ever make all the local stops. I don't think they're, or if they do, it's very rare in the schedule for trains to go Hicksville, Westbury, Carl Place, Mineola, Maryland Avenue, New Hyde Park. I think they do Westbury or Carl Place, but not both. Maryland Avenue or New Hyde Park, but not both, I think. The idea is that these stops get a little bit of service, but there's no attempt to have local service because the idea is that you only take the train to your 9 to 5 job in Manhattan, not to travel between 2 suburban stops. And so practically all trains stop at Hicksville. There are super express trains that don't. Nearly all trains stop at Mineola. There are some super express trains that don't. And the thing is, all of these trains skip all of these stops. And I don't just mean Belrose, Queens Village, and Hollis. I also mean Floral Park. They do not stop at Floral Park because they don't think about connectivity. Because again, why would you ever take the train between one of these stops and one of these stops? You're only going to Manhattan. So the express to Jamaica. Again, there are a handful of super express trains that don't even stop at Jamaica. But again, most trains stop in Jamaica, Mineola, Hicksville. I don't think any of them stops in Floral Park, and this is a mistake. And exactly, Joel, yes. So another 2-track lane on Ronkonkoma. Yeah, but why? I mean, the main line's okay. I mean, it's busy, but it's busy, but it's okay for a train to be busy. Oh, there are a few trains at Floral Park. Okay, because so anyway, about the people driving to Hicksville bit, I do want to dwell on this a little bit because there is even a term for that, which is called the push model, and this is a Caltrain term. So Caltrain has this person, I think his name is Bob Doty, who was considered one of the more competent people internally and is not actually competent. Who had this, and I think it's his idea. It's called the push model, where the idea is that the only reason you would ever go to a stop other than the main express ones is if the parking lot is full. So the push model for Caltrain is to design a system of express trains in the traditional peak towards San Francisco in order to push people to use the less busy parking lots. The idea that you would ever access the train by any means other than driving is alien to those people. And this is true even on Caltrain, which is the most reverse peaky of any American commuter rail system. It might be the only one that runs symmetric service. Caltrain runs the same frequency inbound and outbound. Most ridership is inbound towards San Francisco, but there's a substantial reverse peak ridership there. And yet they think in terms of the push model. This is something that I have not seen by that name in New York, but it's exactly how people think. The idea is you build more and more and more and more parking lots at Ronkonkoma. This is how the busiest suburban station in the United States looks like. Okay, can you tell that this is a land use that screams busy station? This is why 10,000 people a day board inbound. Can you see how much development there is here? Yeah. Okay. What the station does have is express trains, and I mean infrastructure that is just like parking lots and a lot of express and super express trains, and it's also the eastern limit of electrification. So people from further east drive here. Before this was electrified, they drove all the way to Babylon, which was the easternmost electrified station. And yeah, so people drive to a cheaper park and ride. People drive to a park and ride with more available spots. People drive to a park and ride with faster trains. It's not ever about local transit connections, and this is a huge problem with how the LIRR views itself. Again, stuck in the 1950s, kind of 9 to 5 commuters who hate the city, think the city is dirty, think the city is full of dirty people, and define themselves in opposition to everything in the city. You say service like the subway in Boston, people say, huh, yeah, that sounds interesting. You say service like the subway in suburban New York, and people are literally acting like you're trying to rape their children. That's terrible. And if you're wondering why I'm using that metaphor, it's quite a lot of it is, not all of it, but quite a lot of it is connected to this kind of libs of TikTok, okay, groomer type rhetoric. And yep, more parking, yeah. If they expand electrification, as I said, I think they should stick with third rail. Yeah, the airport, but the airport is not oriented around the train. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Advantage of the central would be less sharp roads. That's not very. Yeah, as you mentioned, Court, it's only for high speed rail. If it's for a commuter train, so let's look at where the curves are, and let's do Google Earth just because it's easier for me to do the math scroll here. Yeah, there's a pretty sharp curve at Hicksville, but Hicksville is right here. So yeah, this is a sharp curve. I don't have a proper track map with the exact curve radius, so I'm going to have to wing it. This maybe about, I'm worried this is, let's try the 380. Yeah, it's about 390, let's say. Okay, 390. 100 kilometers an hour. Now, 100 kilometers an hour is not exactly what high-speed rail is made of, but 100. But this is the end of the curve. This is 650 meters from Hicksville. I mean, I guess from the start of the platform, it's 850. When you accelerate, you reach that speed, 100 kilometers an hour, about 400 meters. So we're talking an extra half kilometer at 100 that you could otherwise do at 160, maybe. Yeah, you see why I don't care particularly about the curve. This is in seconds. This is how much a curve costs you in seconds. You need to pad. Yeah, 7 seconds. Yeah, this is why this doesn't really matter for commuter trains. Here, this matters a little bit more because it's in the middle of the line, and yet this is also a wider curve. So this looks, and again, there are people who do there's a professional way of doing it, and I'm doing the quick way. 730, I guess. Yeah, this is like the trains are like physically the track speed limit here is lower than 137 kilometers an hour. I believe it's 80 miles an hour. This is 86. Yeah. So even if this is even if it does limit you relative to 160, it's basically irrelevant. So the main reason you might want to revive this line is if you want direct service to Levittown, which I don't think is a terrible idea, but I do think it is not the best idea. The one way I can see this happen is if there's a lot of demand, and if the trains here keep getting and the trains here and the trains here keep getting overwhelmed, and these trains are relatively empty. And this would be a relief line, but remember, it's not the best relief line because the whole point of the system is to run these local, these express. So Levittown will still have. I mean, again, ignoring station access time, Hicksville is going to have way shorter Manhattan access time than Levittown. Maybe from Levittown it's going to be faster to do this than to do. But even then, I'm not 100% certain. So again, maybe useful as a relief line, but by itself, I don't see it. Okay. Yeah. 130. Oh, right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I guess also third rail trains technically can go 160, but it's rare. What do I think about cross LRR connectivity? Oh, you mean Hicksville Babylon like this? I guess. Honestly, I would run this as a shuttle. I would run this as a force transfer type of shuttle. The main reasons that I'm actually scared about overloading the main line with more through trains. Not just because this is much more overloaded than this, but also because this is perhaps because it's overloaded, perhaps because this junction might be difficult to fix, is where you really want to be in a position where you're running the inbound trains on pure headway management. Once the train comes here, it just goes to Manhattan. This is also why East Side Access, I think the way it should run is these trains make all these stops. From Floral Park, they run express to Jamaica. From Jamaica, they run express to maybe Sunnyside, if that exists. If not, then direct to Grand Central. If they do stop at Sunnyside, Grand Central. Don't split them. Don't reverse branch them. Just you want the trains to be as substitutable as possible because you should be scared of delays, and one way that you can cram much higher train count, much higher train throughput into a metro system, or for that matter, a very urban S-Bahn system than you can to a very interlined regional rail system, is that the trains are much more substitutable. If your 7 train, for example, maybe the 7 train is not the perfect example because there's local and express, so let's handwave that for a moment. Maybe the L train. If one of these trains is delayed 2 minutes, the train behind can substitute. There's no alternation of terminals. There's nothing like that. And so that makes you a lot more flexible. And as soon as you're on mainline rail, you lose that flexibility. So you want to schedule the trains to be as substitutable as possible, which means mainline trains should go to the same place. This is why I'm down on reverse branching. Now, I do not believe that there exists a regional rail system without reverse branching. There are some with very little reverse branching. The RER in Paris has very little reverse branching, but has some. And this contrasts with the metro situation where very few systems have any reverse branching. New York does, London does, Munich does. I guess Tokyo does, but the Tokyo subway is most of it, not all of it, but most of it is functionally just regional rail tunnels connecting various commuter railways, mostly private commuter railways. And so you want as much as possible to run segregated operations. Let me make it clear. You want to run segregated operations with different train lines not sharing tracks. You don't want to run what they currently have. That is to say, the trains share tracks, but they're segregated in the sense that the trains are racially and class segregated. The LIRR charges premium fares, and thus ridership on the LIRR is unusually white and unusually wealthy for the even for the demographics of the region. Yeah, okay. So, Shaul, never apologize to me for being off topic. Thank you very much. In Never Live It Down, and by Never Live It Down, I mean I'm a little bit proud of this, actually. Also, note the timestamps on all of these. Note that I've written multiple long threads about goblins on Twitter. Shaul, never again complain to me that you are getting off topic. You can complain that I go off topic, sure, but like for you to complain that for you to apologize for going off topic as if I apologize for necroing old threads on Twitter. Anyway, so I know this was supposed to be about Jamaica, so I'm giving a lot of context about the other junctions, mostly because they're easier. So Queens Interlocking, it's actually pretty easy. You just grade separate it. Now, it's gonna cost money. It's not gonna cost a lot of money because I know the Herald Interlocking, which I was down on 11 years ago, but I think that you can make lemonade out of these lemons. I think that, so what they did is they built a rail over rail grade separation that essentially allows, so there are 4 tracks here, and the Herald Interlocking change permits the southern tracks. So the way these tracks go is it's not, so 4 tracks usually are run as a kind of 4-track railway, let's say let's say express tracks in the middle, local train tracks on the side or something. These don't run this way. So, so 2 tunnels under 33rd Street, eastbound, westbound. 2 tracks under 32nd Street, eastbound, then westbound. It's a very easy mistake to make. I made it when I first crayoned Regional Rail 13 years ago. I know Rethink NYC has also made that mistake of thinking that these go eastbound, eastbound, westbound, westbound, or can be modded to be this. No, they can't. There's an actually grade separated thing in the tunnel that converts it from 4 tracks to 2 and 2. At any rate, the way this works is that the southern tracks are much better located relative to the old train to the existing Hudson Tunnel to Jersey. The northern tracks mostly are just paired to go to the yard. You can pair the Jersey tracks with the northern pair of East River tunnels, but it is a little bit annoying through the interlocking. Again, I can see. I mean, as I said, Harold, I was pretty down on it. It has a lot of problems, but you can make lemonade out of these lemons. Especially because the Gateway tunnel, so the thing that's not even depicted as under construction, but is in pretty advanced engineering, is to go around here and is going south. So it's not going to pair with the northern track pair. It's going to go to these tracks, which mostly stub end here, and this is why there were plans 20 years ago, which I think should be revived and improved, called Alt-G to continue under 31st, and then there's the Alt-S version, which has 5th and 6th tracks to Long Island. They are not needed. And Alt-G is to instead go RIP to Grand Central and through a run from Jersey to Metro North. And then, while we're crayoning, you see this yellow line? It's called Freedom Tunnel or West Side Line. It's called the Empire Connection, and it's how trains can go from the Hudson Line to Penn Station. There is no regional traffic in this. There were plans called Penn Station Access West, Penn Station Access East being this connection of Metro North. Instead of going like this, going like this. There are only Amtrak trains, or many Amtrak trains, but only Amtrak trains that go like this, and then to Penn Station. So Empire West, no, it's Empire West, sorry, Empire Connection and Penn Station Access West would likewise use these Amtrak tracks. They have fewer trains right now than these tracks because fewer trains go to Albany than to Boston, but there are some trains. And what I keep saying is that they should, so while recurring, realign this a little bit. So instead of ending here, they should build a short tunnel to go here, to the northern tracks. Herald is a way to get from the southern tracks to these tracks, which, if you note, are north of the main line, of the Lirr Mainline, without any at-grade conflict. The pre-Herald situation is that there would be at-grade conflict, not in opposed direction, but same direction, so northern tracks to Long Island. Yeah, PSA West is still planned, but it's not actually happening the way PSA East actually is happening. Anyway, so the Jamaica issue is that right now, pre-East Side access, some trains run through the main line, some run through to Brooklyn. There were some that ran through here, but again, it was very light traffic. This was never electrified, so it was one train a day. And now I guess there's nothing. Now there are more jobs here than here, so the plan with East Side Access is to try to send everything to Manhattan, and this means redoing the Jamaica track layout. And then they were talking about making a shuttle, making these commuter rail stops, maybe charging subway fares, maybe charging higher than subway, less than commuter rail fare. I'm forgetting what it's called, but so the idea was to reduce this to a shuttle. I believe that there have been enough people yelling at them they're going to maintain some through service, and I do not remember, and the people in the comment section know this better than I do at this point. Now, as Cheryl just mentioned, the LIRR used to do time transfer with cross-platform transfer, and they did something very clever with the time transfer across the platform, which was they did something that I don't think really exists normally, which is three-way time transfers. So look at the platforms here. Okay, we have 8 tracks. I mean, there's track 9, but it isn't as important. And 5 platforms. And the way this works is that you see the track 2 and track 7 are between 2 platforms. What they would do, and I think they still do that, is that so these are eastbound, these are westbound. So the idea is trains from different destinations, from different origins. So a Brooklyn train and a Manhattan train, maybe even 2 different Manhattan trains, are going to berth on tracks 1, 2, and 3 outbound, or 6, 7, and 8. Sorry, 6, 7, or 8 outbound, 1, 2, and 3 inbound. And then the train on track 2 opens. It opens doors on both sides, and then you can have a cross-platform transfer from track 1 to track 3 that involves walking through the train. So this is a very unusual 3-way cross-platform interchange. And this is very common at, I think, at rush hour as well, to do this kind of thing. And then there's going to be a tidal wave of commuters on a train that's going to divert to Brooklyn that change to the train that goes to Manhattan. And so this is really not a bad idea. The one thing that I would change is that at rush hour, if you're running trains that are supposed to be perfect substitutes, you might want to not make the mainline trains on the LIRR participate, even though they're kind of going to be the most interesting trains to transfer to. I mean, you still want the cross-platform interchange, but you maybe don't want them waiting for other trains. You don't want other trains waiting for them, because at rush hour, if these come every 3 minutes or something, you don't need to time the transfer. And you want, again, to just try to run these separate from other lines. So at least that part is okay. It's the rest that's not okay. So What they should be doing is, um, well, so as I say, let's start with the principle. Integrate the timetable, the rolling stock, and the infrastructure. Now, the rolling stock here is already integrated. All of these are EMUs. There's the odd diesel locomotive. Just kick it off the tracks. That's not going to matter very much. And then the question is, what infrastructure are you building? So there's East Side Access, which is going to mean that there are still only 4 tracks going west of Jamaica. So thankfully, it's not going to be 4 tracks going on this that become 6 tracks, 4 here and 2 here, because this double track exists, and this is going to be Penn Station access. So it's actually wise to pair Penn Station access with East Side access. Now I think that Long Island interests were being too selfish and demanding that ESA open first, which I think is going to happen anyway. And only then even discuss Penn Station access, but pairing them is good. It is a good thing that they're being paired. This is efficient use of the tracks, and it's okay if one of them opens before the second. It's not that big a deal. There is somewhat of a capacity crunch on the main line, but by the time all of this reconfiguration happens, these are 4 tracks that have something like 36 LIRR trains entering Penn Station at the peak hour. So, in addition to maybe, I don't even remember how many Amtrak trains, maybe 2, maybe 3, it's well below the capacity of a 4-track line, so it's okay. Now, to make maximum efficient use of this, let's see, 4 tracks here, 2 tracks here, very busy tracks. So you want to make these tracks here busier. That is to say, you want to load them with more passengers. How do we do that? Well, you want to encourage people to take the trains here in lieu of maybe other trains. How do you do that? You do it through fare integration, because right now, the plan for Penn Station access, as it is for everything else involving commuter rail in New York, the plan is to keep it segregated, not segregated in the sense of separate tracks for separate trains that have interchanges rather than interlining, but segregation in the more traditional sense of this is the train for the white people, this is the bus for the black people. And it's not as racialized as I am portraying it, but it is very racialized. LIRR ridership, predominantly white. Buses to Long Island, often to destinations that are served by the train. I like that this is in the under construction part where this part is cancelled. Buses that are quite closely parallel to the train and are far slower. Predominantly black working class people from eastern Queens working on Long Island. There's not much job sprawl on Long Island. There's certainly not a lot of job centers here, but there are some working class jobs here. The job sprawl, importantly, the job sprawl issue that I mentioned, is often a high-end phenomenon. So, as I mentioned, lots of people who are designing vaccines work on Route 128 in Boston or or I-287 in Jersey. Very few people like that work on the island, but people who people who work retail at the shopping malls, where the people who design vaccines at the Pfizer HQ in Manhattan go shopping on weekends, those jobs exist on Long Island, if that makes sense. Yeah, this is really weird. Oh, yeah, there's Amtrak Deadheads, so it's, yeah, okay, so, yeah, first of all, the Deadheads are, reverse peak. Second, if you ran a symmetric service instead of Deadheads, you would have throw running. Third, yeah, the simplifying stopping patterns is what I'm talking about, but also upgrading the signaling. I mean, it's one of the things that looks really scary, but in this day and age of ERTMS, which I no longer have the link to, except something that I wrote about it for Transit Matters. So this is ERTMS, European Rail Traffic Management System, which consists of two things. The first is ETCS, which is European Train Control System, which is the actual signaling, plus something about which GSM radio frequencies they use. It has an American version, which is called Access, which is not multi-vendor, I don't think, and it certainly doesn't have the same flexibility, but it is largely the same capability, and so just run that. Like the LRR, one of the problem is that it inherits a specific New York City pathology, which is the "we're special, we don't need to learn from anyone else" mentality, to the point that they think that they have their own signaling system and it works, and why should they install positive train control? And then when they were finally forced to their positive train control implementation, while that of the MBTA is just access and it was pretty cheap to install, the LRRs, I don't remember what it was, but it cost several times as much. Yeah, so 24, I mean, remember, the Hudson River Tunnel has 25 right now. I mean, maybe not right now, but it had 25 on the eve of Corona. So again, this is not something that is such a weird thing that it only exists on one line in Munich. Munich, by the way, has 30. Does it matter whether the main line goes to Grand Central or Penn? Excellent question. I don't think it does, as long as it's only to one destination. So the reason that I call for opening Sunnyside Junction, by the way, as I mentioned, you want to run more trains on Penn Station access to help fill the northern tunnels, just because if you don't fill them, then you're going to have 4 tracks reverse branching to 6 here, which is inefficient. And then if you build a station here at Sunnyside Junction, then you can have a cross-platform interchange. By the way, the junction here is grade separated. You can build cross-platform interchange. I believe in one direction it's is easy, in the other direction it requires moving tracks, but I don't remember which is which. Between trains that go on the main line to Grand Central and trains that go on the Northeast Corridor to Penn Station. And you can still have pass-through tracks for Amtrak to just not stop at the station. So this is Sunnyside. So again, schedule things to add a lot of service here. Now, once you do that, you're no longer in a position where you're just trying to cram trains from this 4-track system anywhere, because they're starting to compete for slots for this, which is fine. Again, remember, otherwise it's 4 tracks becoming 6. So this means that you should have some through trains to Brooklyn. And again, I don't know if the current plan is to do that or not. There have been sample timetables posted that Shaul and others have been badgering me about, and I've not read them yet. And this is, I think, part of this. So the Jamaica capacity. So we're going to get to Jamaica in a bit, I promise. And all of this matters because, let me see. For the record, I don't agree with this. I think Mainline Local should, I think Mainline Express should go to Grand Central. And the reason is that this is not going to through run, and this means that you're just going to have a segregated Grand Central to Mainline service. But again, I can see other people come to different conclusions. Say what I said before about Shaul. And okay, so yeah, I've seen your proposal for Sunnyside. So what is this? Yeah, I know I'm 90 minutes, and they need to, and 9 o'clock is a hard limit. So I'm going to finish with Jamaica just as a conclusion. Remember, note that I'm talking always about where the service goes, because this is because this is incredibly important. You can't discuss infrastructure without discussing what servers are going to go. So Um, the upshot is that, first of all, they should keep not running through Lower Montauk. Lower Montauk doesn't get to anything. I mean, yeah, there are some interesting neighborhoods here, but look at the land use. Look at the land use. Yeah, Long Island City is a nice place to go to, but this is many things. Manhattan is not one of them. There's not even a good connection to Manhattan. The jobs of Long Island City, yeah, there are some here. Amazon HQ2 was supposed to be here, but Amazon HQ2 is not happening thanks to all of New York City's municipal left and also AOC for ensuring that this would happen. The city loves you very much. Please resign. Um, so the jobs actually exist and have not been pushed away. Are here. So not here. I would just land bank this until they can build yet another tunnel and then turn this into another tunnel to Manhattan. So fundamentally, we're talking about 8 tracks, 2, 2, 4, becoming 6, 2, 4, and that's fine. That's fine. I mean, not all of these are very high demand lines. So early on, or even middle on, probably this system, the South Side system, just converges to 2 tracks. West Hampstead might be orphaned. It's the weakest of these branches. And from Hampstead itself, it's going to be faster to do this. So here you probably want to run, I know, train every 10, train every 10, train every 5 minutes. And that's going to be just a line that runs every 2.5 minutes. And now it matters what infrastructure you're planning to build, because if you ever plan to build this, the Lower Manhattan connection, it's going to be very easy to just say, okay, these trains go to Lower Manhattan. You can change cross-platform and maybe walk through a train. It's not going to be timed, but it's okay. You run every 2.5 minutes. And this goes to Lower Manhattan and beyond. That's easy. The problem is, if you don't build that, or if you do build that and it hasn't opened yet because the year is 2023 and not 2033, what happens? This is less desirable. This is a less desirable terminal in this one. So probably what you want to do is run here what you can and then eat the rest here. So maybe inherently Atlantic lines, that is to say Long Beach and Far Rockaway, run as a kind of captive system with 2 branches from Brooklyn through Jamaica to Far Rockaway and Long Beach. As always, please integrate the fares. Jim Crow has been repealed. Jim Crow has been stricken down by the Supreme Court for now. And then you probably want to have Montauk, so Babylon branch, like this, maybe joining some of the trains on the main line, and then if you're it absolutely can be shoehorned. You can do a train every 5 minutes. The main issue is yeah, and the Babylon branch should also have more stops. That's nice. Again, because LIR doesn't think in those terms. The way Babylon works is trains go Rockville Center. I forget if any of them ever stop at Lindbergh, but they don't stop here, and this is a problem. So add that stop, but also go here, and then maybe what you should be maybe doing is these trains. So train every 10 minutes, train every 10 minutes. Probably shorter trains if they don't go to Manhattan. They go here, and then a train every 5 minutes. And then you reduce this to maybe even a shuttle to Valley Stream if across the platform it's a train every 5 minutes. Go through Jamaica, and then probably this takes the local track, this takes the express track. I can be convinced to do it the other way around, but probably this is better just because this has more. This probably has more long distance ridership. And then Hampstead, because we're talking about like an early implementation, because on the 10 to 15 year horizon, really this needs to exist, this tunnel. So before that exists, there's probably not going to be a ton of local ridership. So I can even see something like local trains to Hampstead. Maybe they run every 10 minutes, and then trains to East Garden City also every 10 minutes, paired to every 5 minutes here. And then from Jamaica West, they interline maybe with these trains that also run every 5 minutes. So it's a train every 2.5 minutes on this line through Penn Station. And this is going to be a little bit awkward. It's going to be the northern pair of remember that Penn Station has on the east has in the East River two pair of track lines. So they would be using the northern ones. So this should kind of be the local, and this should be Amtrak. And Penn Station access, and you can also use this one for Port Washington, which is not part of that system, but you can filter it here very easily. It's not going to be a problem. This is probably the service pattern that you want to do. Some do stop at Lindbergh. Okay. So once we've figured out what's a good service pattern, that's where you start figuring out the way the junction should be, and this is where so this was not terribly hard to do with the pre-ESA configuration of the junction, and I think they've tried to do some fix to cram more trains through the main line that I think wrecked a few things. So what you want to do is, first of all, the Atlantic branch just stays Atlantic. So let's see. So here we have the Atlantic branch. Note via the coloring that this is grade separated. This is why it's portrayed as a little tunnel. So Atlantic branch and Atlantic branch. And now they and look at the things that are not in black. So that would be Atlantic branch on track 5, which is really weird because you want track 5 to be outbound. So this is the outbound, and this is being turned into track 6, which is fine. And for some reason, they're doing tracks 3, 4, and 5 all meeting the inbound, whereas you probably would want track 5 to meet the outbound. It's kind of weird. So Atlantic branch becoming track 3 is completely fine. Then tracks 4 and 5 do whatever. And then you want to make sure that you can stay on the Atlantic branch without conflict. So that will be from track 3, Atlantic branch, or track 4, Atlantic branch. I generally don't know why they're having 4 tracks for that. They don't need that. And now it's 4 tracks, and the whole point is that the Atlantic branch drops to 2 tracks so quickly that you don't really need 4 tracks worth of capacity there. 2-track Atlantic branch. And this is a tunnel, so that constrains you. So far this looks fine. Because remember, the whole point is to take the Atlantic branch and segregate it. Remember, the idea is to segregate trains on tracks as opposed to segregate passengers by income or race. And then you're in a kind of annoying situation. What is the annoying situation? The annoying situation is that because we keep the Atlantic branch tracks 3 and 6, it means that tracks 1 and 2, and then tracks 7 and 8 are going to just run as a 4-track railroad, and that's fine. I mean, you can run a Lirr Mainline, so inbound, outbound, and we can track these. So this is the track pair, and here they start splitting, but we see the local track that just becomes line 9, which is the annoying one. It doesn't connect too much, so you want to make sure that this straight direction goes here to track 8. and the Lirr Mainline here kind of splits at track 7 and 8. You want to make sure that the straight direction from here is going to be track 7. So kind of like this, and then this should be track 8. And then track 1 and track 2 should be symmetric with that. And again, these are tracks that more easily lead to the express tracks, unfortunately. I'm sorry, to the local track. And now, wait, what? Okay. And now we see the two mainline tracks, and the two mainline tracks. You see also that it's the Montauk that branches off the middle track, so the Montauk is going to be easier to connect with the express tracks, actually. And this is not necessarily great, and the reason is that you're just going to overload the express tracks. So this suggests that you might want to specifically. Oh yeah, okay. So so they're already doing that. Okay, good. Because you want to make sure that the Montauk can maybe hit the local tracks without conflict. Now, if you do have conflict, it's going to be annoying, but not going to be the end of the world. 235 trains have an at grade conflict, same direction. Now, the 235 trains are incredibly constrained, and this leads to serious capacity problems, but they still run. If it's very short, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. You don't want to do that. But in a pinch, maybe not with this frequency, but in a pinch, you're not going to literally die. Whereas with opposing traffic, you will die. So don't bank on this being in the long run, but at least try to. Like try to grade separate it. And again, the main grade separation that you need is to make sure that the Montauk hits the local well. If it hits the express, then you're forcing a lot of non-Montauk trains to be local, and that's just going to be too much demand on the express, I think. So this is the extra stuff that is necessary, at least relative to what is being portrayed here. Yeah, but accessing the far express track is just not very important. Like, what's important is access to the local tracks, and the local tracks here are just 1 and 8. There's no way to let track 2 hit local and hop over track 1 to express. Now, track 1 can hit express, track 2 can hit local, but within a grade conflict, and this is what we're trying to prevent. Now, as I said, it's not as deadly as an opposed direction conflict, but it is pretty bad. As I said, there is precedent for it in the city, on the subway, but it's precedent that's very constraining, and quite a lot of the interlining proposals have to figure out how to get around that, either through operational compromises, that is to say, no more express trains to Utica, just locals, or through doing some grade subs on the junction for, I think, $300 million is what the subway said it would cost. So anyway, this is what I think needs to be with done with Jamaica. And remember, this is based on a service plan. It's a service plan that sends Montauk to the local tracks of the LIRR. If you instead sent Montauk, for example, to be the same as Atlantic, that is not as that's not trivial, because you see Atlantic, and the thing that hits Montauk is here. And you would probably want the connection to be before they hit the express, so you'd want to do it here, and likewise here you'd want to have the connection here. But it's something that you can actually do. It requires a little bit of junction changing. It's actually, as I said, easier to hit the Atlantic. You don't need grade subs. You just need you just need turnouts. But that's something that I think is only viable if the Atlantic branch is going to be sent to Manhattan. If it can't, then do this instead. Okay. I have maybe 10 minutes, and then I have to go to a meeting, so I'm going to start taking questions. Can I draw out the layout at some point? Yes, but not now. If I had unlimited funds, I would just build the tunnel to Lower Manhattan. Would I place the Atlantic Branch track between the mainline tracks? Oh, like make that tracks 2 and 7? I don't know. I don't think so. I can see the attractiveness of that, and then handle the local express at Sunnyside or Floral Park, but it just seems, as I said, I can see why this is interesting, but it's not, like, I don't think it's a huge priority. And when you say unlimited funds, I mean, there's more concrete that you can do. Okay, what can be done to provide redundancy to the system in case of incidents and during maintenance? Okay, so here's how you avoid service disruptions during maintenance. You do maintenance overnight. You do not do maintenance on tracks that are being used. You do not run overnight. Maybe if it's a 4-track line, you can do some sort of skeletal single track overnight, and then you can just maintain the 2 tracks that are not adjacent to that one or something. But it's completely normal for trains not to run overnight. There's the LIRR likes running overnight, but I mean they don't get a lot of ridership out of it, and it horrifically complicates maintenance. And during incidents, just have fewer incidents. The whole point of, for example, electrification is it means you don't have as many incidents. Making sure the trains are reliable, making sure you have up-to-date electrical switches. What else? How many trains should go past Babylon, and where should electrification end? I don't know. I imagine you should just electrify all the way to Montauk, because you probably should run some intercities to Montauk. And when I say intercities, I don't mean Amtrak. I mean that is an intercity distance. Functionally intercity, even though in America, as here, they would be run by a state commuter rail agency with subsidies, rather than by an intercity railway that cannot receive subsidies. So in that case, it's worthwhile to be completionist, just because the LIRR tails, and this is more of an LIRR than a Metro North problem, but also a Metro North problem. When you have an almost entirely electrified system, the diesel tails are so bespoke that they generate very high unit costs, because they have their own dedicated set of, for example, maintenance facilities, which can be very easily closed without replacement, because the extra EMUs that you would need are drop in the bucket based on the EMU fleet. So they just generate costs, and the LIR also has a labor rule that says crews qualified separately on diesel or electrics. That is, I don't know to what extent this is a stupid rule, but either way, the impact of that is that on the diesels, the crew scheduling is incredibly inefficient. So on the LIRR, I would just say electrify everything, even things that are very far, and not very high ridership. So how many trains should go past Babylon? Probably not a lot. I can see, I don't know, up to Pacho, up to Spionk, maybe a train every half hour. Past that, I don't even see a train every hour to Montauk. I'm almost tempted to say that you can plausibly terminate all the long trains at Babylon, and then run like 2-car trains from Babylon to Montauk or something. But like Eastern Long Island is really tail wagging the dog. How would I do cross-platform transfers at Jamaica? You could keep doing it through the train. You can even, and I'm not even averse to timing it. I just am really worried about I'm just really worried about schedule fragility on the express trains. If you can time the express trains to have walk-through transfers, that would be really cool. And then it should be done. I'm gonna look down a little more. How far into Jersey will they throw the Atlantic branch? Um, as far as it needs to be. Like, I mean, the point is to run urban and inner suburban lines, so that would be and then you go up to Secaucus, and then you just run on the Erie lines. I guess these can even like be very long term things, like Montauk to to Port Jarvis or something. But I imagine most trains are just going to go to something like Suffern or Valley Stream, not Valley Stream, Spring Valley. Oh, I love how this is how they have Yiddish here. Um, Skvero. Should be done with the platform turn tax? I don't know. It can be an extra platform, and it can. I'm almost tempted to say that you can put the Atlantic branch on this, but that messes with the cross-platform transfers. Like the platform, that platform is just really awkward. It can be used as for some extra things. Maybe I don't know if it's easy to send the West Hampstead there without creating too many upgrade conflicts. In the case of Metro North, some of these can be overhead line electrification, which would be cheaper. Yeah, this is the Hartford line. This is not completionism. This is just an important line to electrify. Waterbury is completionism. Danbury is completionism. Um, Wassaic is completionism. Poughkeepsie is, again, just better service. Poughkeepsie is the one that I can see arguments both way about catenary versus third rail. Yeah, that's the problem. It's going to be a lot of seasonality. Two car trains to bear in mind when I say two car trains to Montauk at summertime, I mean two car trains that run every half hour. Yeah, it's a 4 hour train. Yeah, I mean it's a 5 hour train. Yeah, sure. Okay, so first of all, turn crew at Penn Station, in the same way that crew used to change at Gardino on the RERB, crew changes at Shinosaka on the Shinkansen. You can do that while still having very short dwell times. And one so once you so here's a cool trick to make schedules more robust. Drop in crew. When the trains run very frequently, the crew that terminates a train doesn't need to take it back. It can take the next train back. If the trains run every 10 or 15 minutes or something, so yeah, they get a slightly longer break. Who cares? Workers need breaks. Yeah, it should all to Springfield, and honestly, again, Boston to Springfield is not completion, and it's just a good service. Are there any more questions in the next 2 minutes? 1 minute? When this turns to 9, I'm going to start dropping off at 9:05. It's a hard stop. You may. Oh, Ben. Have I talked about Northeast corridor issues? Yes, I have, in I think sometime about a year ago. In crayons west or south of America. I haven't done a full Jersey crayon, just a little bit of regional rail. Yeah, I mean, you do. I mean, you don't. Why would you avoid the shoreline? The shoreline is where the demand is. I mean, if you want higher speed, just run on 995. Just build cut off on 995. It's by far the easiest part of high speed rail on the north. It's harder to build. I mean, east of New Haven. But oh, hi, Henry. Um, you'd like to know how to get more involved in transit planning, past the point of granting. Is there a way you can reach out to me? Yes. So here is my email, and I cannot actually write it here because of what just happened. So anyway, this is my email, and yes, join ETA. Ping me on Twitter, and I will, or ping Shoal on Twitter, and we can send you the materials for how to join. Yes, Jersey would be an interesting crayon. Jersey has different issues, and I can already see George F. Drain on Twitter nitpick everything I say, so that's going to be very exciting. Okay, this is basically the end, but in case something has been typed that I'm not seeing yet, I'm going to be late to my meeting by about 2 minutes and ask if there's any final note on this. Thanks, Joel, and thanks for joining, and thanks for watching. You see, this is one of the reasons it's better to do it on Tuesday than on Saturdays during Shabbat. Yeah, Jersey needs a lot of great separation. Yeah, thanks for watching. Um, yeah, and I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. So thank you, and if you're watching this on YouTube, I will hopefully upload soon. If you're watching this on Twitch, I will see you again in a week. So ciao ciao. Wasn't Shabbat already over when I started on Saturday? No, it was noon Shoal's time. Any Discords for transit stuff? Yes, Prague. Yes, send me. I have a Discord, and I will send you. If you can reach out to me on Twitch, I will send you an invite. I'm paranoid about open links. Or reach out to me on Twitter, and I will send you an invite. I'm paranoid about open links because of Snap. So ciao ciao. Thank you.